Hello and welcome to the first video on the channel. Today's topic will be on the subject of remote viewing. I've noticed that there are TV shows that cover this concept. Every once in a while they pop up and somebody speaks to someone that was in some sort of document that was hidden away, and that person will sit down with them and show them an example of remote viewing by making them remote view on their own. I've heard Joe Rogan talking about remote viewing as well, or at least the people that come on his show talking about it. My issue with remote viewing as a topic of discussion generally is that there has never been a significant piece of data or a significant piece of proof for people to say, wow, that's real. So I will start this off by, in essence, making some quick points and then having you, the viewer, do your own investigation. Remote viewing was a program that was put together by a man named Swann and another man named Hal Puthoff, who were contracted by the government to create a program by which people could be trained to, in essence, remote view. Remote viewing was not the only issue. The idea of somebody saying they could remote view or getting some points correct about analyzing an area that they have no knowledge of ahead of time. The issue was accuracy. And the program that Hal Puthoff and Swann put together used multiple points of reference. And by points of reference, I mean multiple remote viewers looking at the same point in order to increase the accuracy of the information that they were providing. Swann wrote a book called Penetration. The title is longer than that, but if you go to Google and you type in Swann and Penetration, you will come across the PDF of his book. What we are concerned with, based on the subject matter of today's discussion, is the first couple of sections that are in that PDF. Now, Swann, if you read the entire PDF, is quite a strange fellow. He's odd, and he makes some pretty strange and outlandish claims, even in the sections that we are concerned with. But in the first section of that book, Ingo details how the program came about, how the government did testing on him as someone who had an exemplary control over this skill. Basically he goes on to make some interesting claims about doing some remote viewing sessions of the moon, where he happened to see some bright lights and some humans who were chained that were what he believed to be going into a mine. He claims that his consciousness came across another consciousness that actually did notice him, and Ingo immediately retreated when that occurred. He claims that entity that he felt that the entity was surprised that he was there. Another one of his sessions, he claims also that the section of the government that he was working with very closely also had a lot of UFO related interests, and he claims that at some point he was taken to a forest where they showed him something that is akin to the metallic UFOs that we hear about all the time. that was apparently shooting beams of light out of itself. And in fact, the UFO noticed at some point that him and two fellows from this government operation were watching, and in fact, it started shooting the beams of light towards where they were. And apparently, those beams of light were destructive beams of light. Okay, take that with whatever grain of salt you wish to. But most importantly, as I said, he does detail the program that was in place. He talks about remote viewing in some depth. And more, but I find that people say that you need to quote unquote look at the literature, and if you look at the rest of his literature, it's questionable. He's a questionable narrator, to say the least. He does mention that at some point he was at a grocery store, and he beside him was a very curvaceous young lady who looked outlandishly beautiful. I believe she was looking at oranges or apples or some sort of produce. And he says that he got the same feeling from her that he got on the moon from the existence that noticed him. He said that he knew at that point that that person was not a person, in fact, and he believes that she was an alien. So, again, if you had a grain of salt the size of the Antarctic, I would say take that with what he says there. Who knows, right? Who knows? That was my whole feeling going through his book, was I just kept thinking, who knows? This man is making claims, but his claims, nobody can substantiate them. This is where I was wrong. Now, due to the Freedom of Information Act, a couple years ago, there was a large release of information by the CIA that had to do with documentation, all sorts of documentation about secret programs that had been declassified. One of those programs was probably the remote viewing program. And if you go to their website, the FOIA website, and they have a search bar there, if you type Ingo Swann into their search bar, you will receive numerous articles, at least a couple pages of articles in return that mention Mr. Ingo Swann. They mention him when they're talking about remote viewing. They mention him. In fact, when they're talking about the program, they mention him in terms of asking him, putting him in shielded rooms and asking him about specific areas and how he's always accurate in his descriptions. So, based on what I'm able to see here, these documents that are declassified government documents, they're not doctored, to our knowledge, and this man's name is mentioned over and over again in relation to remote viewing. If you go to the FOIA site and in the search bar you type remote viewing, there's plenty of more articles on that topic. Now, as I said, Mr. Ingo Swann was quite an eccentric fellow. What he says must be taken with a grain or multiple grains of salt. But the fact that these records exist, the fact that at the very minimum, a third of what he is saying can be verified, to me means that A, remote viewing is something that the government looked into. B, they looked into it with some metric of success. C, if that third of what he's saying in his novel, well, it's not a novel, it's a book, let's say, is true, how much of the rest of what he's saying is true? Now, C is not a topic for today's video, but maybe it's something that I will cover in the future. The only point that I would like to make today, and in this video, is simply that Ingo Swann is a very important character in this story. People mention his name, most of the time they don't. There was a recent video where Robert Bigelow was interviewed by Joe Rogan, and Robert Bigelow mentions Ingo Swann when it comes to remote viewing. Now again, all information needs to be verified, it needs to be cross-referenced, evidence needs to be seen. I find that nobody ever talks about the FOIA documents that were released, because I have a feeling that people are afraid of information being verified. I have a feeling that even the people who want these things to be true, as Joe Rogan says, he really wants to believe. Even those people, I feel that it is the part of the human condition, no matter who you are, to be afraid of verification. And unfortunately for all of us, it is verified that Ingo Swann was part of this project. It is verified that the government had an interest in this man. It is verified that this interest scaled over a large period of time. It is proved that he was contracted by the government. It is proven that he was not the only remote viewer. If you read those documents about remote viewing, you will see that even in those documents, they mention multiple viewers viewing the same object, viewing the same location. And I'm not saying object loosely. Yes, they view objects. What that means, I'm not sure. I don't know, because the documentation is not specific. It's not specific enough to know what sort of objects they're viewing. But the point is that this is something that is not discussed when remote viewing is brought up. I believe if you showed people these papers, it's a lot more proof-worthy than sitting in a room with a guy that's telling you that he can teach you how to remote view, sending someone to some location that you don't know about, asking you to scribble some words or some pictures on a piece of paper, and then going to that location and connecting those scribbles and those drawings to stuff that's around that area. That is not a difficult thing to do. If you draw a brown squiggly line on a piece of paper and you go to a park, guarantee you there's going to be something in that park that will match the shape of a brown squiggly line. To me, that is not enough proof. This is the proof. Again, I will put the links to the FOIA site on the description. You can do your own research. And again, the book is called Penetration by Ingo Swann. I don't hear Hal Puthoff when he is interviewed talking about this stuff either. I don't hear him talking about the strange things that Ingo Swann observed. And again, I do believe that if remote viewing, in fact, if it's true that anybody can learn how to do it, if that's actually true, Ingo Swann is a peculiar case, as he was able to do it better than anyone that has ever existed, as far as we know. And with that said, this is the end of today's On the Subject of Remote Viewing. Thank you.